The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. It is time for the Week 10 weekend update, full injury report, DraftKings ownerships and props, the same game parlay, and whatever else we end up talking about. Smash the like and sub to the channel while you are here, and let's jump over to the free Mayo Media newsletter. You can always subscribe, again, for free, down in the description. Get this sent directly to you, in case you need to know. It comes out 3 times a week. Taking a look at the injury report. Oh, yes, but before we do that, at runthesims.com, before, in honor of Veterans Day, if you are a veteran and you would like a free premium subscription to runthesims.com for the rest of the NFL season, DM Justin Freeman on Twitter, Justin Freeman 18 on X, sorry. You can find this link in the newsletter as well, and he will hook you up. His DMs are open, so thank you for your service if you are a veteran, and you can jump in at Run the Sims if you're ever curious about using the tools. You can do it risk-free right now, all right? So go check that out. And play in the Listeners League. That's $15 to play, 3 max entry. 250 spots remain. That link is down in the description. Then 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time live on Mayo Media Network on Sunday morning. Tambo and the Ship and Nation crew are doing their start sit and daily fantasy DraftKings preview, all starting at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. And then at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, Cust and I are in studio. Mike Leone from ETR is on the line to break down the slate and look forward to the next set of games. If you ever want to join golf, like a really easy way to dip your toe into the fantasy golf waters, $80,000 for first place, and you win the race to the Mayo Cup. If you win the one and done, you make one pick per week, takes less than 10 seconds, and there's $80K to the winner. So, and there's I think everyone inside the top 10 gets at least 5 figures if they do it this year. So check it out. Running back injuries. DeMarcado is out. For the Cardinals, James Conner has been activated. So James Conner moves inside of the top 20. He's a very solid running back 2 this week against the Atlanta Falcons for your season-long lineups. Dameon Pierre is out, so we're doing Devin Singletary again because it worked out so well for me a week ago. I have him at number 24 in the running back rankings entering Sunday. Kendry Miller out for the Saints. Keaton Mitchell was limited in practice but got a full one in on Friday. He will play to make up a 3-headed monster in the backfield for the Ravens against a very good run defense in the Browns. Plus, you still have to contend with Lamar running the ball at the same time. As mentioned, James Conner is in. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on bye but did not play a week ago in Frankfurt. Khalil Herbert missed week 10. They have Devon A-Chain is eligible to return next week, as is Kyron Williams. We'll see how they go. You can always check out the rankings down in the description and in the newsletter and on DraftKings Network. They're all updated to right now. I'll give them another refresh on Sunday morning. The big wide receiver news that we're dealing with is Jamar Chase in these backs. I was going to say spasms, just back problems. I don't know if he's having spasms or not. He's a game-time decision. I think he's going to play. Will he be fine? Lord knows. Probably. But you keep an eye out for him just in case they deem him inactive at the very last second. Michael Thomas was arrested yesterday, but apparently he's still going to play. They're going to let the legal process work itself out. So not that Michael Thomas has been any good. He's put up a 0 last week, but this week they get Minnesota. Maybe, probably not for me. He's number 37 in the wide receiver rankings for the week. T. Higgins is out for the Bengals, so that means more of the crocodile on Trenton Irwin in your life, and Yeshimash, who's a guy that they use, and they elevated like 2 absolute scrubs. So if you're playing like Showdown, I suppose, with the Bengals, you probably don't need to dig that deep on DraftKings if you're going to build lineups. We'll look at the Bengals offense more in-depthly here in a minute. You can always hit the time codes for all that stuff. Zay Jones is out, so Christian Kirk vaults way back up in the rankings. Calvin Ridley stays where he is, and obviously Zay Jones is out of the rankings. As is Traylon Burks. He is out. Nico Collins is out for the Houston Texans. However, Bobby Trees, Robert Woods will make his return. I like Dell, then Brown, then Woods in this matchup of the receivers if we have to put them in order from best play to worst play as projected by Pat Mayo. Matt Collins is out for the Falcons, so you can probably see a little bit more of Van Jefferson, probably more of Kaderil Hodge, although Drake London will make his return as the wide receiver 1 for that team. Justin Jefferson is officially out for the Vikings. KJ Osborne is expected out despite a full practice on Friday, although that is not official. At the moment, he still may pass concussion protocol and play against the Saints. If not, you got Thirsty Jackson, who stepped in for him a week ago. Probably see 5 or 6 targets in that game for the dead min on DraftKings. Still probably not a good play. Marquise Goodwin expected out for the Browns with a concussion as well. Devontae Parker is out for the Patriots in Frankfurt. Robert Woods expected in, as is Super Demario Douglas. Michael Wilson expected in the return of Kyler Murray for the Cardinals after missing last week. Steph Diggs expected in. Curtis Samuel expected back after missing last week. Ditto for Drake London. Josh Downs in the Frankfurt game. This we do not know as of yet. If he is out, Alec Pierce becomes a much better play in that game just because a more condensed target share would end up going to him as we get to the same game parlay a little bit later on for the Frankfurt game. If I was to make it again on Sunday morning, which, maybe I will, maybe I'll double down on it, that it would probably have Alec Pierce overs, but I don't want to do that right now if Josh Downs might end up playing. DJ Chark missed the Thursday night football game. Not that it really mattered for the Carolina offense because, with him, without him, they're still terrible. And Josh Palmer was placed on injured reserve. At tight end, Darren Waller was placed on IR for the Giants, and Dallas Goedert is on bye, but he is likely to go to the injured reserve as well. Kyler Murray, he's back, baby! Can't say the same about Matt Stafford next week. No clue what his status is going to be, although Brett Rippon was cut by the Rams and then signed by the Seahawks as a third-string quarterback. Maybe to get some intel on the Rams. Who knows? Justin Fields missed Week 10. He should return in Week number 11 for the Chicago Bears. There's a up to $30,000 giveaway on Mayo Media Network. Thanks to Toe Tag and Tambo. He qualified for King of the Beach. That goes next Sunday in Miami. He will give away 10% of his winnings to you, the good people out there, as long as you are qualified for the draw. You can get the full details on Friday's show on the Pat Mayo Experience or in the newsletter. Essentially, subscribe, rate, review, and set on those auto downloads to the Pat Mayo Experience on Apple or Spotify or both to get 2 entries into the draw and leave a 5-star review, and boom, you are in that draw for the up to $30,000 in giveaways. If he wins, it's $30,000. If he comes in last, it's only $600. So, hopefully you're rooting on Tambo to win. Leave that in the review too. Go Tambo, because it is pretty nice what he's doing. I can tell you that I would not be giving away $30,000 if I won $300,000. That's just, Tambo's a better guy than I am, probably much richer than I am, but that is the way that he's going. Always check him out at shipitnation.com as well. Code Mayo works for 10% off any of the packages over there. Let's hop over to runthesims.com right now and check out the Cincinnati game that I was talking about. You can see how we have the distributions allocated in terms of the receiving share for the Texans. To begin with, there's our good friend Devin Singletary, 62% of the workload, which, probably translate to 14 yards or something great like that. Thanks a lot, Devin. You jabroni. And then you take a look at the receiving game for the Texans. Tank Dell projected around 25%, Robert Woods at 15%, Noah Brown at 14%, but you can usually put in a higher depth of target for Noah Brown over Robert Woods. He has a bit more speed at this point of his career, too. Dalton Schultz coming in at 21% of the receiving share. But that's really less important. You kind of know how that offense will shake out. It is this end of the offense that we do not know. And this will presume that Jamar Chase is playing right now. So we have him for 24.5% of the target share. Joe Mixon at 12%. Frankly, I find that pretty high. Between Mixon, Travion Williams, and Chris Evans to suck up almost 17% of the target share seems high to me. That's just me, because maybe in the face of better options, then maybe we don't have that. Then you have Trenton Irwin, who we have at 15% of the receiving share. Tyler Boyd at 18%. Then Yeshmesh at 6.4%. Then, they're going to activate some guys. We'll see if they're activate guys from the practice squad. We have to wait until Sunday morning to see if they're actually active for the game. T. Higgins, obviously out. Irv Smith around 9%. Tanner Hudson around 6%. The Sampler, Drew Sample at 3%. So there's a lot of different options. If you either choose to go to this game in DraftKings or even in your season-long lineups, if that's the way that you need to go, right? So let's try to see here. SimRunner Pro. Let's just run the Sims. We don't need to see how many duplicated lineups that we get here. We can take a look at what the projections are going to be once the 10,000 simulations run to give you an idea of where these guys actually project out so you can make the decision for yourself based on the standardized simulations and projections of how these guys are going to go this week. We're trying to find the optimal lineups. And here we are. Our projections for this game at receiver. So Jamar Chase projects around 19.1. Tank Dell around 19. Kind of crazy to see. I mean, that intuitively doesn't make a ton of sense that Tank Dell and Jamar Chase would essentially be the same receiving option from a fantasy perspective in this game. But that's kind of the way that we're looking at the moment. I mean, obviously, I'm still going to play Chase over Tank Dell, but it's kind of showing you how much better Tank Dell projects out, at least. In reality, who knows if this comes to fruition or not. But you can see Trenton Irwin right around what Tyler Boyd is going to put out, 12.5, 13 points. So Trenton Irwin, 4.3 receptions on almost 6 targets, almost 60 yards receiving. So even in the prop market, once you get the Cincinnati stats, they're not all out yet at all of the sports books, so that can become somewhat problematic, that you don't have the opportunity to jump on these. And we'll see how their projections end up running out when compared to ours. You can always find that in the Sim Runner and in the Prop Sniper on runthesims.com. Code Mayo to get yourself 10% off. You can find that down in the description right now. But like Robert Woods coming in significantly behind. Now, if you told me that Robert Woods ended up with the most targets on the Texans, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be floored by that. But after missing 2 weeks, coming back in where the offense is seemingly passed him by, I would expect a boost to their running game a little, because Robert Woods, although his explosiveness isn't quite there as a receiver anymore, he still is one of the premier run blocking wide receivers in football. Not that they run off the edge all that often, but maybe they will now that Robert Woods is actually back. They can run in his direction. But Trenton Irwin actually looks like a pretty good play, which is not something I would normally say about the crocodile on Now time to check in on the Prop Sniper over at runthesims.com. Hopefully you have BetMGM because their API is all messed up, so it fed us the wrong category for stat. But if somehow they're offering you under Derek Carr 248.5 rushing yards, then I would suggest betting that, even at the VIG of minus 115, as it is a, let's see here, 100% winner. Unfortunately, that's not a real line. That's just a mistake on their end with their feeds. So, sometimes that shows up when you have an automated system like this running in unison with simulations. Hunter Renfrow is under 16.5 receiving yards. He rates out as a great winner. I'm dubious of that just because the Jets keep so much underneath that sometimes when you see the simulations, that if you do try to put some context to it, just like this one, the favorite prop basically of the main slate for week number 10 is Dak Prescott over rushing yards, over either 10.5 rushing yards at a minus 125 VIG. A better play would be over 11.5 rushing yards at a minus 111, minus 113, minus 120 is not really cutting it there. The minus 125 on the over 10 is actually a better bet per the percentages. But obviously the VIG gets factored into the scoring with all of this, and to get very clear what's a better bet and what's not. I worry that in a blowout that this might not end up being the best play, because we did see week 1 against the Giants that Dak Prescott only had 1 rush for 6 yards. Got him halfway home, but not quite there. But he has beat this number in 5 of 7 games, and he did actually break it pretty easily against the Rams 2 weeks ago in a blowout where even the offense was limited somewhat because there was a ton of running in that game. No need to drop back and pass or have any designed runs. And there was a pick 6 from the Dallas defense in that game as well. He still had 4 rushes for 19 yards. So he's passed in each of the past 3 games. He's had at least 4 rushes in all of those games. Additionally, he's beat this number in 5 of 7 games overall. So the sim runner really likes Dak Prescott over 11.5 rushing yards. What can I tell you here? Other ones that it kind of likes for the moment, Kareem Hunt over rushing yards at certain places at 23.5. Gardner Minshew, and that's where we're going to jump onto the same game parlay, is going to be the first kickoff to this. Over 4.5 rushing yards is one of the stronger bets on the board. Just like Alvin Kamara over 4.5 receptions. And that's something that I talked about, I believe it was with Tambo on the Friday show, that, even if you just play the every other week scenario with Alvin Kamara, where he goes for 13 catches or 2, but this matchup specifically against the highest blitz team by a huge margin, very good blitzing team, very bad at covering running backs out of the backfield, the Minnesota Vikings, that it really does set up to be a very good game for Alvin Kamara. But you can see at DraftKings right now, you get plus money, plus 120 on over 4.5 receptions. I really like that one a lot. I think that is my favorite one of the group, and you get the additional money to go along with it. But let's build out a same game parlay at our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. I've already played this one on a different place because DraftKings Sportsbook is not available in my area. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the Colts. Let's go to same game parlay. Click on that. And these were the 3 that I played, although I do want to see both rushing attempts and yardage for Gardner Minshew would be the first thing that I really do want to look at here. So let's try to find old Gardner. Where are we at? Gardner Minshew, alternate rushing yards. Probably don't want to get into that game. Let's just go with Minshew in general. So over 4.5 rushing yards. That's what the Sims like, and he's kind of up or down in any of these. He either crushes this number or comes nowhere close to this number. So it is kind of terrifying to go through in that circumstance. They do not have, they do not have the rushing attempts. That's only available on certain places right now. We jump back over to the prop sniper, and you can see if we just type in Minshew, rushes over 1.5. It is. You can bet it as a solo, although I guess it's not offered as a part of the same game parlay. It's juiced to minus 190 on, let's see here, on DraftKings Sportsbook.com. So yeah, over 4.5 is what we're looking for. I also went in on Zach Moss rushing yards, over 27.5. I think a lot conspired against Zach Moss a week ago in that Carolina game. Frankly, in the second half, there was just no need to actually both run the ball, and they just didn't run that many plays. Only 21 plays ran in the second half for the Colts because Bryce Young threw 2 pick sixes. So the offense had no real time to do anything. So it looks terrible on paper when you look at the split between Taylor and Moss, and a season low single-digit carry for Zach Moss in that game. I just don't think that's going to be the case here. I mean, this is a 2-point game. There's going to be a lot of running between these two teams in this game, and I like Zach Moss to still garner around 40% of the workload, and you can run on the Patriots. Not that hard. That we've seen some big plays from Zach Moss. So 27.5 isn't a huge number to actually carry in this game, considering Jonathan Taylor's is what, 25, almost 3 times as much as Zach Moss right now. Frankly, I like both of their overs. I just happen to like this one a little bit better. So those are the two that I like, and there's one receiving prop that I wanted to go to. It involves our good friend Super DeMario, Super Show Douglas, and it's his receptions in this game. Not alternate receiving yards. You can play those up. You can play the receptions up a ladder as well, but you can go to over 4.5 receptions. You can see the prop sniper likes that one a lot. Always in the prop sniper as well. You can go to the games and just check those ones out if you like. Indianapolis and New England. Again, this is for the Frankfurt game in the morning. Now you can kind of pad these any way you want, but those Minshew prop overs are what the simulator likes the best. DeMario Douglas over receptions as well. And then you get down to Zach Moss, rushing yards over. The median projection is 34. So it comes in as a fairly good play, not a great play, mind you, especially with the VIG coming in, but the VIG is beat down just a little bit. It also loves Mike Gesicki. I'm just not touching that with the 10-foot pool. He hasn't covered this 2.5 number in like 2 months at this point. So I went with the 3 that I like the best, that the simulator also agrees on in this circumstance. So at DraftKings Sportsbook right now, over 4.5 Gardner Minshew rushing yards, over 27.5 Zach Moss rushing yards, and over 4.5 DeMario Douglas receptions. Finally, let's head back to runthesims.com one final time to check out the DraftKings slate for the week and where the ownership is gravitating towards. Again, Tambo and I broke everything down, but now we have more updated information at the moment on Friday's show. So go check that out as we run through lineups and everything of that nature. And play in the Listeners League. The link is down in the description. It's almost full, so if you want to get your spot, go get it now. Tambo and the Ship It Nation crew are going to be live 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time for free on Mayo Media Network Sunday morning, breaking down the updated numbers at that time, because we're going to see a little bit more. Right now, it looks like at the running back position, in terms of ownership, we have Mixon at 24, White at 23, Singletary at 17 because he's so cheap. I can't even play the flop leg on that. My single favorite play on the board is Alvin Kamara, and no one appears to be using him. I'm going to say no one. I mean, that's pretty relative, but 6% ownership because of the price point. He comes in at $8,300. Like, it's very expensive to go to him in this game. But Jordan Addison also rates out really well from an optimal perspective, so that's a mini stack that you can cobble together if you like that one enough, but you need to find the money for Alvin Kamara, and it's pretty tough. But when looking at ceiling projections, it's basically McCaffrey and then him. Etienne and McCaffrey in that game, 17% for Etienne, same as Pollard, same as Bijan. James Conner returning around 15%. Then you have Christian McCaffrey way down at 14%, which is pretty low. Although, again, he's $9,200. It's hard to make him work in a lot of these lineups. It just kind of struck me that single digits on Kamara, 1 week after having a game where he let everyone down at chalk ownership, just seems like a pretty sensible play to me. And when we take a look at the optimal rate for all of these guys on Run the Sims, you can see that in 10,000 simulations that Christian McCaffrey is the most optimal running back of the week. He appears in the optimal lineup 1 in 5 times, then Mixon, then ETN, and you get Kamara down at 9.9%. But it actually makes him one of the better leverage spots on the slate at almost 4% because his ownership doesn't match up with it. Ditto for Christian McCaffrey. His optimal rate is actually 6% because he's only coming in projected owned at 14% at the moment. At wide receiver, we continue to look at the optimals. You see that it is Tank Dell, although he's going to be the highest owned projected, at least, wide receiver on the slate at $5,500. So for pure optimal rate, it is Tank Dell, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, Mike Evans, and then Trenton Irwin at $3,000. Dollar-redos for Trenton Irwin. His projected ownership at the moment is 1%. That will have a stark upgrade now that the T. Higgins news is official and that once Jamar Chase gets ruled in, even if he gets ruled out, but now that we have to wait for all of the projected ownership and information to update itself. So by Sunday morning by inactives, I'm guessing that comes in around 15-16%. As someone with Demario Douglas last week, I think he was I used him. He was 67% owned in my King of the Beach qualifier, but well into the double digits. These cheap wide receivers, yes, they work out from time to time, but they are such a good fade spot because it doesn't guarantee you anything. If we get to Sunday and Trenton Irwin steps on the field, maybe he plays 6 snaps and they use Yeshmash in his place instead of they start running 2 tight end sets and bump out Tyler Boyd to the outside for this one particular circumstance. With a running back, even with Devin Singletary a week ago, it was a terrible outcome, but it was the right process. We got the cheapest $4,300 running back that you could put into your lineup, and he had almost 20 touches. There's a 1v1 example. Dameon Pierce is out, so Devin Singletary is going to recoup the touches in that spot. Just because T. Higgins is out doesn't mean Trenton Irwin is going to just do what T. Higgins does. They might use other receivers. They might use a different rotation. He might be covered because he's not as good. Joe Burrow might look at him not a chance I'm throwing to this 5'5" white guy. I'm just going to throw to Jamar Chase, who's the best receiver in football. We'll just double pepper him with targets the entire game. There's just so much that goes into a receiving game that's harder to project out role and volume versus a running back, which is, again, a pretty 1v1 situation in a lot of these circumstances. So for ownership this week, Dell, Tyler Lockett, Jesus Christ. No, thank you. Marquise Brown, Jamar Chase still coming in pretty highly, although obviously if he doesn't play, his ownership's not going to be very high. And then that will get filtered around to some of the other options. Then people will go up to Keenan Allen, down to CeeDee Lamb. Tambo and I tried to build out the stacks for the Detroit game. The Goff side is probably the side that you want with Amon-Ra and Laporta. It's tough, though, with how expensive it is. The Dak onslaught with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson is much easier to do, and the lineup that we built. It's at the very end. You can always hit the time codes on the DraftKings show, but you can go see the lineup that we built for Dak. I actually quite liked it. I think it's the one I'm going to use in my higher stakes one with a few tweaks here and there. Other than that, Chalky, McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins. Like Hopkins a lot this week. Tyler Boyd, Deontay Johnson comes in pretty at 16%. That's actually not all that bad. That's the same as Jordan Addison. That's the same as Amon-Ra right now. And Deontay Johnson, not that Jair Alexander was likely to cover him anyway, so maybe it ends up being a George Pickens week, but Jair Alexander is going to be out for the Green Bay Packers. Optimal rate, as mentioned, you see Addison down at 12%. He was much higher earlier on Friday and Thursday before Trenton Irwin became available. So a player like this can throw off the entire slate when you're thinking about, because the projections like him a lot. We saw that earlier. 12.5 DraftKings points is going to be his median. You can see his 75th percentile projection is 17%. 24 is his projected ceiling. His median is in his 50th percentile projection, 11 points. That's really good for, points per dollar. 4, that's outrageous. You never see anyone at 4 points per dollar as a projection. But when you get a $3,000 player, he's obviously going to be in, the optimizer is going to spit him out because he's such a good play that, everyone's going to see that when they run these sorts of lineups. So we'll project out a lineup here in a minute. Tight end. Let's see. McBride, best points per dollar, highest projected own, highest optimal rate on the board. After that, it's Hawkinson, Jake Ferguson, Chig, and then the Laporta Patti coming in 5th. But only Ferguson, Hawkinson, and McBride are projected to be in double digits at the moment. In terms of optimal rate, it's McBride, then Dalton Schultz, then Sam Laporta. So again, you see Amon-Ra pop up, you see Sam Laporta pop up, and the goof is like, what, can be 6% owned, something like that, because everyone's just going to play. It seems like people are playing. Goff's up to 11% now. Okay, so that's going up. So that's, I mean, bad to hear because I really like Goff. I just prefer no one use him. But earlier on in the week, it just felt like no one, and the projection showed no one was using Jared Goff. They've come around to that at that point because his other options seem so good. Burrow, Geno, Goff, Dak, Herbert, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but only Goff, Geno, and Burrow project over double digits at the moment. 5% Lamar is pretty nice at the moment. Purdy and Trevi Lawrence in that game too. If you think that one can go over, the number could look pretty good. And then you have Sam Howell and Will Levis, 4 and 3%. Sam Howell, because of the volume that he projects for at the moment, just might be a pure volume play in this game if you think they can get it going on Seattle. On the defensive side, Cardinals D at almost 20% ownership because of the price point, and they're playing Taylor Heineke. It makes a lot of sense. I like the Browns, but now that their ownership is jumping up, I might get off that a little bit. Then the Bengals at 11%. Then people paying up for the Cowboys at 9%. If you can get the money to do it, Seahawks D is awesome this week, at least in my mind, and from an optimal percentage, they are second in optimal rate, only 3% ownership. They are very, very expensive, unfortunately. So the Seahawks or the Ravens instead of the Cowboys because of those ownership concerns, and they do save you a little bit of money. I do like a lot this week. Now, if you can find the money to play the Cowboys against the Giants, just do it. It just seems so safe. Not that defense is ever safe, but that seems so safe. But if you're going to say that the Seahawks are, even 9% for the Cowboys, I can see that breaching double digits, no problem, which would push Seattle down even more. So right now we have it as a 3x spread between Dallas and Seattle in terms of projected ownership, despite Seattle having a great matchup and being $300 cheaper. In actual tournaments, I could see Dallas being like 12% and Seattle being 2%. Then you have a 6x spread with just a little tweak here and there, and all of a sudden Seattle is a bombastically good play at defense for the week. And it's funny to pay up. But for the cheap options, besides Arizona, let's see here. Who do the numbers like? Arizona, the Jags, the Bengals at 28. All right, so the most obvious options. Other than that, you have the Chargers against Detroit at 26. The Giants don't rate out all that well against the Cowboys, which probably shouldn't be all that surprising. Let's generate a lineup and see what some of the optimals are coming in at right now before we get you out of here for the week. Joe Burrow with Joe Mixon and Trenton Irwin. You got Schultz and Tank Dell, Travis Etienne, CeeDee Lamb, Trey McBride, and Cowboys D is how that works out. You can also play this Dak Prescott lineup. It's Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb, Trenton Irwin, and Cardinals D and Trey McBride. So that's where you're saving all your money. It's a double tight end set. And then you have Tank Dell with Dalton Schultz, and then Christian McCaffrey as the other running back. But you can see that Trenton Irwin is available, is in 100% of all of the generated lineups, just based on how much of a value he is. So when we take a look over here on the right-hand side, and you can see with all the 55 lineups I just generated, with no caps on anything, it's just trying to give us the highest projected owned lineups, irregardless of the total ownership of anything. Tank Dell and Trenton Irwin appear in 100% of those optimized lineups. Trey McBride, 98%. CeeDee Lamb, 89%. And then there's the big drop-off. Mixon and Burrow, 56-55. Bijan, 53%. McCaffrey, 49%. Cowboys D, 47%. ETN at 40%. Then Dak at 30%. Then you got Schultz and Boyd, Cardinals D, Seahawks D, Bengals D, that kind of thing. Now, I just want to run a quick experiment just to show you how you can manipulate these things if you really want to. We take a look at all players, points per dollar. The best player on the board by far, Trenton Irwin. Baker is actually second at 3.7 at $5,100. But you can see the projected ceiling is just so much lower. And if you use Trenton Irwin, then you don't need him anymore. I'm going to purposefully exclude him from this. I'm going to take him off the board, and then I'm going to rerun everything. And now you're probably going to see a little bit different of scenarios, only because you lose that $3,000 skeleton key that's coming through. So if you wanted to fade him, here's what some of your lineups optimized might look like this week for week number 10 on DraftKings. So you get close to the same, but now Christian Kirk has worked his way into the highest projected one. So it's Burrow with Mixon and Bijan, CeeDee, Christian Kirk, and Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Trey McBride, and Arizona D. So to take a look back over on our exposures, again, Trey McBride, 100% of lineups, Tank Dell, 100% of lineups, CeeDee Lamb, 95%. So those three remain consistent. But then we get a bump with some of the other guys. So you see that Bijan goes from like 45% to 73% with Mixon. Those end up being the two optimal running backs who just fit with this build. But again, there's no $3,000 receiver to plug in. So there's no Christian McCaffrey anymore at all. He doesn't appear. He appears in 2% of these 55 lineups that I just generated because you just don't have the money for him anymore. Like you don't see any Alvin Kamara in these lineups, who I really like this week. It doesn't fit in with the different salary combinations that people want to go with. It's just you're sticking in that low 6,000 Mixon and Bijan range. So if you want to pivot this week, these are sort of the guys that you'd want to pivot off of. McBride, Dell, Lamb, Mixon, and Bijan. Although Lamb doesn't seem to be getting quite the ownership of someone else. But I think that in this Mixon, Bijan range, although the ownership would kind of bear it out, I don't see, if these two are going to be that popular, they're either always going to be played with DeAndre Hopkins or not played with Hopkins at all. And then instead of playing Trey McBride, you can play Cade Otton instead. Then you can use Hopkins versus Cade Otton in that game that others aren't going to. So you see Mayfield sneaks in now at 11%. Boyd, instead of Irwin, becomes 38%. And Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk start getting their names mixed in. Jordan Addison makes a cameo in 16% of the lineups again as we take Trenton Irwin out of it. So that's the one look with Trenton Irwin, one look without Trenton Irwin, just to show you how that gets manipulated a little bit by having that one super value in a lineup that the optimizer is always going to go to unless you tell it otherwise, because it ends up being such a value. So you're going to have to make that choice yourself. You're going to basically play 100% of Trenton Irwin or play 0% of Trenton Irwin, because those feel like the two stances that you'll want to make this week. To crocodile on it or no crocodile on it, all right? Smash a like to the episode. Remember to subscribe, turn on those auto downloads, rate and review 5 stars on Apple and Spotify, the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. You do that, you get into the $30,000 giveaway, all right, with the up to $30,000 giveaway. Thanks to Tambo and the crew over at shipitnation.com. They're live Sunday morning on Mayo Media Network. I am live Sunday evening on Mayo Media Network. Please tune in to both of those. And thank you to everyone who showed up live for the Monday Night Football watch along. It was a lot of fun. I'm working on trying to do one for the Black Friday Jets game as well with myself, Cust, and another guest. So hopefully you'll enjoy that too. Playing the Listeners League while you're here, okay? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this week. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.